In messy, high-stakes workplaces and in a messy, high-stakes era, leading with love isn't naive. It's the only strategy. I'm Morra Aarons-Mele, and this is The Anxious Achiever, the show that looks at the intersection of mental health and leadership and work and asks, how can we do it all better? Choose love, then choose strength. My guest today, VR Ferose, has spent 26 years inside SAP. Now he leads the Academy for Engineering. Over the years, he's held various positions, managing director in India and senior executive roles all over the globe for this giant company. He's a rare thing. He's an insider in a big system who studies social movements and radical change. And Ferose has learned something simple and powerful and almost antithetical to where most of us are right now. When change is frightening and the stakes are high, love is the only leadership move that works. Not romantic love. Love as a practice. Seeing people clearly, protecting their dignity, amplifying human agency, and helping everyone flourish in the way that you would want to flourish. Ferose applies that ethic at work. He created the renowned Autism at Work program, a Harvard Business School case study and program that has inspired hundreds of programs to hire neurodivergent talent around the world. In Ferose's case, because love demanded inclusion, and of course, innovation demands inclusion too. In a world where AI automates our hands and our heads, the only advantage left is heart intelligence, says Ferose. It doesn't mean being a pushover. As one of India's former presidents told him, only strength respects strengths, and leading with love sometimes looks like standing up to bullies, setting boundaries, and choosing humane means over win at all cost ends. This conversation goes deep, but I think that you will leave with your own inspiration and hopefully tools to lead with love in your own life. Ferose, you and I talked previously a little bit. Welcome. And, one of the things that I'm struck by, just knowing you for a little bit, you've written books, you contributed to a graphic novel. Did you illustrate or
No,
write?
of course not. I got an illustrator to do that. I'm not that good.
I was going to say you are a polymath, but that would be amazing. And you're a student of life, of leaders. You study social movements.
Yes.
Your head is sort of blocking, but we've got Obama behind you, and then
Yes.
we've got Gandhi
On
on
the
the
other
other
side.
side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, and I have kind of a funny question as I was thinking about a pull that I was thinking if you ever experienced, which is that you have been working at the same company for almost your whole career, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet you study sort of radical social movements.
hmm
How do you balance your own need for disruption and change with being, in the same large system for
Yeah.
so long?
Yeah. No, very good question, Morra. The first thing I want to share is that even though I worked with SAP for 26 years, I feel like I've worked in different settings. So I've done, I would say, 5 major roles at SAP, 4 different locations. So I've
Hmm.
lived in multiple cities in India, then spent some time in Germany, last decade in the US. So I feel like I've done different things, but within the same system. And I think there are some incredible advantages of spending a long time in the same company, especially in a large organization like SAP with 100,000 employees, is that you can achieve tremendous speed and you can get things done much faster than a lot of other people because you have a lot of earned currency. And that earned currency compounds with time,
Hmm.
right? So I know a lot of people in the system and a lot of people know me, and there is a lot of inherent trust. And what somebody would take maybe a week to do, I can get it done in an hour because you know the people, you send a mail and things happen very, very quickly. And often people underestimate that power. And maybe that's one of the reasons I'm able to do so many things is because I just have saved a lot of time. That's a simple explanation. The second thing is I've also worked with a lot of the same people for a very long period of time. I mean, it's not that I've worked with the same people throughout, but you kind of meet again. You like some people and they like you and you want to work together. And there is a lot of data to show that your performance actually increases when you work with people whom you trust a lot,
Yeah.
right? And it's like there's a lot of data which shows that if you look at the performance of pilots, if the pilot and the co-pilot know each other for a long time, the arrival times are much higher. The any kind of accidents are almost zero because there's an inherent trust to them.
Hmm.
And we sometimes completely forget that trust produces speed, and we tend to optimize only for performance. But if you also optimize for trust, and you can kind of be okay with a little bit of a less performance, but if you optimize for trust and connections, I think you can get a lot done. um, and maybe that's one of the reasons I'm able to juggle different things, even though I feel like at the end of it everything is kind of seamless and interconnected anyway.
I like that actually. When you think of the great social movements that you've studied over time, what do you think of in the context of leadership? I know you spend a lot of time teaching leaders, thinking about leadership. What is your personal connection between disruptive, massive social change and everyday leadership?
I think they're so deeply interconnected. And I actually am very fortunate because I kind of run my own nonprofit and I can
Mhm.
do a lot of experiments there and see what works and actually bring it back to work at my
Mm.
corporate job. And it seems to almost always work. And I don't even see them as, one as a different system than the other. The core principles remain the same. And I think if we study history, you will find solutions to some of the biggest problems that the world is undergoing today. And one of my beliefs is to put the spotlight on some of these social movements which are not most people don't know, for example.
Mhm.
And of course I grew up in India, so a lot of my inspiration comes from Gandhi and our independence movement. But there's one very less known social movement which was started after independence, which I'm greatly inspired by. Um, so, after Gandhi's assassination and after India's independence in 1947, his spiritual successor was somebody named Vinoba Bhave.
Mm.
And um, he was again revered like Gandhi and loved immensely across the country. In fact, he was more respected than the Prime Minister Nehru, who was himself a very towering statesman. And the biggest challenge that India faced after independence was massive inequality in wealth, and it was an
Hmm.
agriculture country. The wealth was locked in with landlords. So anybody who owned land was wealthy, and everybody else
Mhm.
was extremely poor. And since the wealth was always transferred from generation to generation, the wealth was locked into the family. So the poor became poorer, and the rich became richer.
Sounds
And
familiar.
it sounds very familiar. And so Vinoba Bhave had this incredible idea, and I think it is one of the most magical ideas. And to even believe that he pulled it off was amazing. And let me explain this in very simple things. He said, what I will do is I will travel from village to village across the country, and he will go to a village and ask the landlord to adopt him as his child. And so the rule was pretty simple. If you had two children, he would say, please adopt me as your third child. And when you adopt you as a third child, he's now getting one third of the land. And so he would basically collect, and nobody can say no to Vinoba. He's like literally the god. People treat him like, as Gandhi's successor. So he would walk to a village and ask the landlord, adopt me as your third child or your fourth child or your fifth child. And they would all line up and just adopt him as their child, even though he was an old man. But as soon as he got adopted, the land, one third of the land would get transferred to his name, and he would go from village to village collecting land in his name and then redistributing it to the farmers. And he did that for 11, I think 11 or 13 years. He walked with just two pairs of shoes and two pairs of clothes. And there would be people who would walk with him for 13 years from across the length and breadth of the company. And he managed to transfer, I think, 44 or 4 million acres of land. It was one of the most peaceful land transfer in the history of mankind. Time magazine had him on the cover, and they wrote a beautiful one sentence. And he said, I am going to loot you with love.
Loot you with love.
Yes. He said, I am coming to loot you with love. Right? And I thought it's so profound. If you just move that 80 years from today, what's the biggest problem we are facing? Inequality. What are the wars about? Land. Whether it's the Israel conflict or the Ukraine conflict, is about land. What is the solution? The solution we're all thinking of, military intervention, will never solve it. You can do whatever you want. It's never going to get resolved. Never. 0% chance in history. What's the solution? Love. Right? And this is so simple, yet nobody across the world is trying to think about that. And I feel that's why I feel that social movements are so profound and powerful, that you can apply that to the current political environment, but you can also apply it to the corporate world. Because people ask me, oh, does love work in the corporate world?
Love in the
Are you
corporate world?
sure? Is that even a word that you should use in the corporate boardrooms? You should. And I've only led with that most of my career, and it's worked magically. People want to work with people whom they like. Likability is such an important element. And I think we've just optimized for the wrong metrics. All our metrics are so unidimensional that we forget that we are a whole person. And there are so many other dimensions of who you are, and just optimizing for one form of currency, which is profits, or how good you are in your performance, will sometimes, or most of the times, lead you to the wrong outcomes.
It's funny. I have another colleague, Dr. Ken Ginsberg, who's a very famous pediatrician and researcher who researches basically the relationships between parents and their teenagers. And he's been working with teenagers for decades. And, when we think about teenagers, we think about conflict a lot of times, right? We think about bad behavior. We think about experimental behavior. We think about scary behavior. We think about the teenager slamming the door in the parent's face and saying, leave me alone, right? I don't need you anymore. And Ken, like you, has always trained people, from parents to doctors to psychologists, that the only solution is love.
Yeah.
Not in a romantic way.
Yeah.
But in the way of, I see you as a person.
Yes.
A person with agency, a person with needs, a person with strengths. And I see that in you, even if you're doing bad things to me.
Absolutely. My son is a teenager. He's 16 years old. He's on the autism spectrum, nonverbal. Yesterday we had to go for a blood draw, and he scratched my hands. And if you look at my wife's hands, it's full of injuries, because sometimes that's one way he's communicating with us.
Yeah.
Right? And I say this with absolute conviction that my son has taught me more in his life, without uttering a single word, than all the business schools that I've been to, from Harvard to Yale to Stanford. And to deal with him every day we have to lead with love. There is no other way. It can be frustrating, it's hard, and I'm not claiming that I'm perfect by any far means. But once you lead with love, I think things just magically open up that you can't even imagine. And I think that's the core principle that is lacking in today's hyperactive world, that we have forgotten the basics. And every religion tells this. I've read so many books, and I'm like, but this is the most time tested idea
Yeah.
mankind has ever come across. This is the
It's
most time tested.
it's I mean, I don't want to make this a political show or a show about the state we're in. I mean, I think it's hard to have love when there isn't trust.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and this may be putting you on the spot, like, can you think of a time in your own career where
Mm,
you had to sort of consciously lead with love in the face of a conflict, or if you feel like someone with you
mm,
chose love? I think
mm,
wasn't there a famous song in the '80s, like, we were all wearing T-shirts that said "Choose love"? Um,
mm.
like, how has that shown up in your own career?
One, I've been incredibly fortunate, I would say, that most of my working relationship with my colleagues have been pretty healthy. I wouldn't say that
Mhm.
all of them have been great. Some have been average, some have been mediocre. But I had one instant where it was toxic,
Mm,
where it was really toxic. And I think that was the one when it tests you. Can you still lead with love? It
mm.
sounds like a very stupid idea because you want to kind of, get to the fighter in you and fight this out. But I think there's a very beautiful thing. Former President Dr. Abdul Kalam, whom I was very fortunate to know very well, he passed away a few years ago, but he was one of the most revered people and loved people in India. He was a president for a single term for 5 years, and he had an incredible story. He came from abject poverty. He used to sell newspapers, and he went on to lead India's nuclear program,
Wow.
and then became the president. And I felt, in fact, when he passed away, I wrote a whole column saying he was the Mahatma of my generation.
Mhm.
Because when I grew up, I was, Mahatma Gandhi was not alive, and so we only heard about him. But Dr. Kalam was the Mahatma of my generation, and was very fortunate to invite him to a talk at SAP. And the most common question he was asked is, "You always was for peace and love, but yet you are the father of the nuclear movement in the country." He built the nuclear bomb in
Very
India,
relevant today.
very relevant today. And 20 years ago, he said something incredibly profound. He said, "Only strength respects strength." He said, I didn't build this to bomb any country. That was never the goal, but it was an important asset to defend ourselves. India is the only country in the world who's never gone to war in its entire history. Never gone to war in its entire history.
Really?
Yeah, it's the only country in the world. We've been always attacked and we would defend, but we would never go to war. And so there is a deep understanding of peace and love, even though we are a nuclear country. And the reason I'm saying this is what I realized at work too is, if you coming across somebody who's a toxic person, who's a bully, you have to stand up and be strong.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that you're not leading with love. They're not in conflict. They're not mutually exclusive. I mean, that's something I want people to tell. Just because I stand up and defend myself and fight back doesn't mean I'm not leading with love. And I think people often get this confused in their mind. And
How? Go deeper on that.
yeah,
How? I mean, I think this is a question that so many people struggle with, right?
yeah,
When they have a conflict, when they're trying to manage someone difficult, when they're a parent, how am I strong and yet
yeah,
loving? Like, that is the
yeah,
quest for many of us.
yeah. And it's hard. It's like I don't wish bad for anybody to start with. That's the default positioning, which means I cannot hate a person. I don't have to like a person,
Mhm.
but I would still love that person. very different things. I mean, there are a lot of people whom I don't like. I don't like the way they behave. I don't like what they do, but I cannot hate that person, because what people don't recognize is when you hate a person, you burn first.
Mm.
And that's a very hard place to be, because especially when the person has done something so toxic to you and bad and evil to you, how do you know to respond with hate is the starting point, right? How can you still wish well? How can you still say, I wish the best for you? But, we don't have to coexist,
Mm.
right? And it was pretty clear that only one of us would exist in such a toxic environment. It was pretty clear that, because, we just didn't get along on various topics. Doesn't mean that I have to be evil and hate. I think those emotions hurt you more than anybody else. So to be centered in that thinking is very, very hard. But doesn't mean you're not strategic about what you're trying to do. It's sometimes people think, oh, you were very strategic about it. You did this in a certain way. There's nothing wrong with it, right? Sometimes you are at a conflict and you have entered a conflict zone, and you have to be thoughtful and strategic, especially in a competitive environment. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Doesn't mean that you're not leading with love.
Yeah.
And it's a complex phenomena to unravel and figure it out. But how do you feel after the conflict is over is also equally important. you
Yeah.
know um do you feel good about the way you played?
Hmm.
It's such an important emotion. You can win and feel empty,
Big time.
big time, right? And I think this idea of what happens after is so important. I think there's a lot of literature about post-traumatic st- stress disorder, but I think there could also be post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
Did you come out of it feeling better? Did you grow
Right.
in the process? Did you play it by the right rules? And one of the core ideas is really the purity of intention. And Gandhi spoke about this for his whole life. He
Mm.
said the intentions matter, the purity of the intentions matter. It's not just the outcomes, the means matter too, the way you play the game. And I think we have slowly eroded that idea. We are only worried about the outcome. We live in a winner takes all world, which is so unfair.
I mean, we live in the opposite, which is the ends justify the means. I
Yeah,
would say that that is obviously the prevailing ethos that certainly, yeah.
yeah. But the means matter. The purity of the means matter. And it matters because it's a long game. And I think
Mm,
people are playing the short game, are
yeah,
playing, and that's the difference. I know you look at the people who are playing the long game, they are not addicted to immediate outcomes. They're not addicted to short term wins. They're not addicted to win at all costs. They are playing the long game. They're like, I'll do the right thing over a long period of time. And that's where I said the idea of compounding, I think Einstein said it beautifully, is one of the eight wonders of the world. Is the eighth wonder of the world is compounding. If you do the right things over a long period of time, the benefits will outweigh the losses or the fact that somebody beat you in the initial stages.
always.
Compounding is such a brilliant idea.
It's so funny. You really you really set me up for this one because in terms of short term and long term, I mean, obviously the topic of how to be a leader in the age of AI is huge right now. Whether or not we truly are at singularity in 15 years or AGI in 5, I think that certainly when I talk to leaders, there is a sense of all anyone cares about is winning the
Mm,
next year,
mm,
the next 2 years, like push, 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 transform, transform, transform. And when you talk about when you work with engineers who probably are
mm.
facing tons of pressures,
Oh, yeah.
how do you help them, like, give us some tactical advice
Mm.
to sort of keep keep the means and the humanity at the center when everyone around you is pushing towards an outcome?
it's a very deep question. I'll give you two insights for whatever it's worth. The first, and this is something my friend Nipun Mehta, whom I think is one of the finest thinkers in the world, he uses a word called heart intelligence.
Hmm.
He's a brilliant technologist, but he's a humanist more than anything else. And his core principle is the following, and it's very relevant in the world we live in. He says, if you look at the industrial revolution, it automated the hands. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
we did with our hands, that was automated by the industrial revolution. Things became faster, we could produce more. He said, what the internet and now maybe the AI is doing is automate our brains,
Mm-hmm.
our head.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't have to think anymore. AI does all the thinking for you, right? So he said, if you look at a human body, there are three elements that makes us unique. It's the heart,
Mm-hmm.
it's the head, and it's the hands. And so he
Mm-hmm.
says the hands were automated by the industrial revolution. The head, our ability to think, is automated by AI right now. You don't have to think anymore. He says the final frontier is the heart. And that's why he says the only thing that matters and makes us uniquely human is our heart intelligence, the fact that we can feel. And so he says that's the final frontier. If human beings have to differentiate themselves, it is because of empathy and love and compassion. And he said the future will belong to people who optimize for heart intelligence, not for AI. AI is done, right? I mean, here again, it's a winner takes all. We'll have a few winners, and we know who probably they are. But
Mm-hmm.
what happens to the others is that we are going to differentiate on the element of heart. Now, take it to the next level. A lot of parents who have my friends who have kids going to college, they ask me this question, Firoz, what should my children study? Because I have
Right.
no clue. In 5 years' time, none of the education is going to make sense. So, what should they study? And I'll tell you, 5 years ago, I said, teach them coding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I said everybody should know how to code because that's going to be a timeless skill. Now I call all my friends and apologize because I was incredibly stupid.
Got that
Coding,
one wrong.
I got that wrong. There's a beautiful saying, experts almost always get everything wrong, and I was wrong too. Because now coding is commodity.
Yeah.
So now the question is, what is this skill? And the thing that I've come to the conclusion is the only jobs that would remain are eye contact jobs,
Mm.
which means where there is a human to human eye contact that is required, that would be the last one to get automated. And I'm saying this from my personal experience. I'll tell you the three jobs where the people are earning more and there's a higher demand and will not get automated anytime soon are the following. The first is caregiving. Okay.
Caregiving. Yeah.
I can see that. My son is severely challenged. My parents are old. The thing that I'm hustling about is to find good caregivers, and you're ready to pay anything for them. They are far and few. Why
Mm-hmm.
is that so important? Because it can't be automated.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is not about just taking care. It's also about the need to connect at an emotional level with a fellow human being. Now, there's a lot of argument saying that, oh, in Japan, now you have these robots because it's an aging population and so on. But in the immediate future, I see caregivers to be a job and a role which will exist. The second,
Hold on.
yeah,
Just press pause there.
yeah,
It will exist, but caregivers are hugely exploited, underpaid. It is a
yes,
job occupied
yes,
by women.
yes,
It is a job occupied by immigrants who are
yes,
traditionally uneducated in
yes,
the, you know. So I think there's actually a profound societal shift.
yes.
And I say this as a woman who is a caregiver, and a working person is, we have to shift our attitude about what care means first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the
We
first,
don't value care.
we don't do it, and we don't value also in the monetary sense. I mean,
No.
my wife, I keep, she's far smarter, more intelligent than I am, but she sometimes feel that, Feroz, what's my worth because I'm a full-time mom, and I'm saying it's the
Mhm.
hardest job, but nobody puts a value to it.
No.
It's priceless. It's the most important task. But we built a society where we said caregiving is just what most people are expected to do, especially women are expected to do. And that narrative has to shift completely. And I agree to your point. That is caregiving the right kind of jobs? Are they respected? Are they well paid? What I'm seeing right now is that the payment for caregivers are increasing, and
Mm.
it's probably the start of this right now, because there is clearly a supply demand issue right now. So when
Oh,
there's
for
a
sure.
supply demand issue, you are willing to pay more, and I hope that will lead to better outcomes and better salaries and so on. The other two jobs, plumbing and electricity. I mean,
Hmm.
Jeffrey Hinton said this beautifully. The only jobs that will exist is a plumber. He said, I'm going to tell my kids to be a plumber. Now, maybe that's jokes apart, but again, what I'm saying is, what I'm seeing is, why are these not automated yet? Because AI is not there yet to automate some of these functions, and it still requires some amount of manual labor. So I think the other things that I see is that there will be a pendulum shift back to where you are craving for human interaction. And I'll give you two or three specific examples of that. One, there was a study, I think, done at Stanford. They said when you are calling for some kind of support line, right, and you call a toll-free number, almost everything is automated right now. People are actually now asking that I need to speak to a human being on the other side, even though you know that their responses are going to be less accurate. The machine is going to be 100% accurate. A human being is going to be 80% accurate, but they say the experiment showed that they want to speak to a human being. And so they said, why is this? Even though you know that the response is going to be less accurate. And it's very simple. It's because they showed that the heart rate goes down, your anxiety levels goes down as soon as you hear a human being. And that's because you know that the person on the other side is able to feel your pain. A machine
Yeah.
cannot feel your pain. So today, the people are now giving options. Do you need a toll-free number or do you need a human number? You want to speak to a human being. And people are opting for human beings because there's a sense of shared pain and people understand on the other side. So I see that some of this extreme automation will also shift back to some people interaction. When I run the SAP Academy for Engineering, the desire for people to meet in person and learn together is so incredibly high, because what
Hmm.
happened was we did extreme optimization with online learning,
Oh, yes.
but we forgot that learning is a full body experience. We forgot that learning, you have to have your head, your heart, and your hands all have to be part of learning. We said, oh, we can just learn by watching a YouTube video, and because it was focusing only on this. What about the doing? What about the feeling? Right? So now I see that a lot of people are coming back to a much more, at least there's a desire to in-person learning.
I agree. And just to throw in a little of, speaker advice. I mean, one of the things that I learned as a public speaker and as an educator is that from Chris West, who's an incredible speaking coach and created my speaker reel, is, he said, Maura, when he looked at a lot of my talks, he said, "You're getting all the head stuff.
Yeah.
Like you're really teaching them what they need to know, but you're totally missing their hearts."
Mm.
And more than that is that you can't reach people's hearts always through words.
Yeah.
You have to reach it through other senses. You gotta bring them in somehow. They need to be in the center of the story. And I thought that was so powerful, and I think that's what we're both saying too, is that no humans want to feel like a mere spectator or a vessel for information being fed to us. We love the convenience of AI, but one of my favorite quotes from Bob Sutton, which you actually wrote about, is, we need some friction.
Yes.
And this is from a blog post you wrote. You said, in the Friction Project, Bob Sutton and his co-professor, I guess, co-author Huggy
Yeah.
Rao explain how smart leaders reduce destructive friction, but they amplify the friction that drives excellence. The
Yeah.
best leaders make the right things easier and the wrong things harder.
Yeah.
But it's also, to me, we need the friction of being in the story, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know about you, I'm a hugger. I love to hug people, right?
I'm introverted. I'm not a hugger.
Yeah.
It's
And,
just, you know.
but there's so much of data which shows that, hugging kind of releases a sense of feeling that is so,
Yeah. It
which,
turns our social brain on.
completely, right? And so a lot of people who come to the academy, um, they sign up for life after that. They sign up for
Mm,
life after that. They say what we felt being here and learning in this kind of a community setup, um, was way more profound than anything else. Of course, it's expensive,
yeah.
because you're in person and all of that, but the gains are far more than, the short-term benefits of just optimizing for virtual learning. And that's what I feel that we may probably pull back to a much more human interaction, because I think the pendulum swung to one extreme, and I see that happening with AI too right now. And it's
Hmm.
got to a point. I mean, I did a Turing test on my columns. So I write a bi-weekly column, and I said, it takes me 8 to 10 hours to write a piece, just 650 words minimum, and sometimes 40-50 hours of research. So I said, what if ChatGPT wrote my columns? It takes 10, I can do the right prompt and it can write the column for me in like 10 seconds. So it saved a lot of time. So I did a Turing test. I took a topic and I wrote my own column. It took me 40 hours, and I asked ChatGPT with the right prompts to write a column. And then I had these 2 articles and I sent it to my friends. So I wanted to do a test. So I sent it to a group of friends and asked, figure out which one is written by me and which one is written by ChatGPT. I did this maybe a year ago, even before, such advanced form of AI. It was fascinating that it was a toss of coin. Most people couldn't figure out which was written by me and which was written by ChatGPT, except the people who knew me very well.
Yeah.
The people who knew me very well could figure out the nuances. They will know, oh, this is not a word that Ferose uses, and so on. But we've got to that point where I'm like, why do we need writers anymore? Is this even required? Because,
Don't tell me that.
right, it took me 20 years to get to a form which I thought was meaningful, and it's completely gone. So one of the things that I think a lot of technologists again got wrong was we felt that AI would actually disrupt arts the last, but it's disrupted arts the first,
Mm,
right? I mean, writing as a skill is
right.
can
Right.
can be done by
Video
videos,
creation.
right? And that for me is the hard part. That is actually the worst impact of AI, is that arts and creativity is now getting so automated that there is no reason for us to think anymore, right? And that for me is the biggest downfall of AI. It's not the other things. It's the fact that, in difficult times, art saves us.
Yeah.
In today's time, I'm convinced that science and technology is not going to save us. I'm so disillusioned when I go for many of these AI conferences that I've stopped going now, because everybody thinks the solution to the next problem is a more powerful AI, which is so completely stupid. Makes absolutely no
Do they
sense.
really? I mean, you're in Silicon Valley. I'm not. Is that, do they really believe that because that
Oh yeah.
is the ethos that they have adopted, and that's why they've been success? I mean, like, what is that? I what is that techno utopianism?
Mm.
What is it?
Now, so I really, I mean, as I said, being in the Silicon Valley has been a blessing and curse at the same time. It's been a blessing because you meet the smartest of the smart people.
Yes.
Okay. But it's a curse because you also see how shallow and hollow their hearts are in many cases. Because, as I said, the only badge of honor in many cases is, how many exits have you done? And, people introduce each other as, oh, he made a 20 million exit and a 15 million exit. And they may be the people whom you don't even want to spend another 3 seconds with, right? And so you've optimized for there is success is defined by a very different metric. I've been studying success for so many years now, and I have this Ralph Emerson quote right in front of me because I thought he for me in his beautiful poem, and I use the last words, really explained what success was. And he says that to know each one life or even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded.
Hmm.
Very different metrics. If your life has made somebody else's life a little bit easier, that for you is success. Now, we don't talk about that metric. I mean, this is written 1899, 1900 or something like. What
Earlier,
happened?
yeah.
Why did we lose that? Because I also feel that many people are kind of riding the tiger. They can't get off it and they can't stand on it. And that's the sad part of the story. I think many of these people are incredibly smart, but they just can't get out of it because, they are responsible to the shareholders and they have to make more money. And so it's kind of a trap.
I mean, the other thing that Emerson said, of course, Emerson was a transcendentalist and believed in the ultimate power of self-reliance, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
was his belief in that we must inherently know ourselves. And
Yes.
the other thing, God, this is crazy, is I printed out a lot of what you wrote from Bob Sutton. I guess you went to his retirement. Bob Sutton
Yeah.
is, listeners, if you haven't read him, do, is, reject social comparison.
Yeah.
We are not raised to be self-actualized, to be self-reliant, in which we have our own internal metric of
Yeah.
success and what a good life is, right? I mean, this is something I talk about on the show because it drives anxiety. Like,
Oh
what
boy.
drives more anxiety than comparing yourself to how much everyone else is smarter than you, richer than you, better looking than you, and has a nicer car? Like, in our society that values wealth, what drives more anxiety?
You know, so one of the simple tests that I do is when I'm and everybody can do this so easily. All you need to know is look at the social media profile. Say if you're on LinkedIn, and I'm only on LinkedIn right now, sometimes on Twitter, but I don't tweet. I think I
Hmm.
should get out of all of social media. But if you just look at LinkedIn profile, if you just read the first two sentences, I decide whether I need to even have a conversation with the person or not. And most people lead with egos, right? Which is like, here is my position, here is the awards, and there are like 5 different lines of how great you are. And I'm like, boy, how insecure is that person?
Hmm.
Like, you can make it out so quickly. Adam Grant did this incredible study, and I'm a huge fan of Adam and a very dear friend. I think of all the books, Give and Take is his finest book. And he
Hmm.
did this amazing experiment. He said, you can give me the annual report of 10 companies, and I can tell you which one will be the most successful without looking at anything except the first page. And I don't know any of these companies. And I can tell you which one will be most successful. And all he did was look at the size of the photograph of the CEO.
You're kidding.
That's all you need to do. Right? And he said, you can stack it up. The smaller the size, or if the CEO doesn't even bother to put his photograph, the higher chance of more successful it is, because he's not leading with ego. The bigger the size, the bigger the ego. Simple.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he said, I don't need to know anything about and read the annual report. I don't have to read it. I can tell you which one will be most. It's a simple thing to do. You look at social media posts. I say the purpose of social media should be to amplify the voice of other people. What people do is amplify their own voice. How great I am. How did I do this? And I say a good social media post should be, here is my friend who's doing incredible work, and this is what makes him so special. You could amplify other people, and most people are
Yeah.
just talking about themselves. And it's a classic ego enhancing activity, right?
Well, I mean, of course I agree, but I think at the same time, back to your sort of where we started with inequality, who can blame us? We're
Mm,
terrified.
mm,
We are also out here fighting for our livelihood and, you know, for our jobs and for the ability to sort of keep up with the Joneses in this culture. Those of us who are in aspirational classes, so that's I respect people for that. Like, I
mm,
respect the hustle. I'm in the hustle. I mean, I'm
mm,
such an egotist on social media. So that's another thing as a leader who you want to lead with love is how do you understand the person beneath maybe the presentation of ego? Like, what's
mm.
underneath?
I mean, again, I agree with you. It's not easy, right? Because we
Yeah.
all have to make a living. I keep telling, I work for a corporate company too. I'm also worried about healthcare and insurance. I have to take care of a special needs child. And I get it, right?
Yeah.
Now, how can you be in the system and still be outside of it is the question.
Yes, that's the
That's
question.
that's the hard, that's the struggle, right? That's the struggle. And I think there is a way, if I think, again, Adam did this study and they said who has the most number of LinkedIn connections, and he looked at the people who have the maximum number of connections, and he found that the one person who's at the highest number of LinkedIn connection, at least maybe a few years ago, was somebody who was not very famous, who wasn't doing posting a lot. All he was doing was connecting two people and getting out of the way. And
Mhm.
people loved him for that. People
Of
followed him
course.
for that, because he said the easiest form of giving is to connect two good people and get out of the way. I mean, the reason you and me are sitting here is because our common friend Vivek connected us.
That's right.
He connected us and he got out of the way.
Yeah.
He didn't even ask, okay, did you meet? No, nothing. He just connected because he felt there could be a connection, and we could amplify each other. We could grow in each other's company. And I think that is a great form of giving.
It's magnificent.
And you'll see that the people who are givers, their network grows over a long period of time. And LinkedIn was a proof of that. Even in the social media world, your connections can grow by just doing the right stuff, but do it for a very long period of time. The problem is we optimize and immediately do social comparison and say, oh, I don't have enough likes and I don't have enough followers. And so how do I get to more? That's the short game again.
Mhm.
Play the long game and don't even worry about how many followers you have. Keep doing the right stuff, and that's how growth happens over a long period of time. So again, if you think through this very carefully, I think you can be part of the system and play a completely different game altogether and still make it to the finish line ahead of everybody else. But
I
then
love
it
it.
is not a sprint. It is not a sprint. It's a marathon.
That's right. You have to, well, to your point that the outcome is sometimes less important than the
Yes.
means by which. I want to shift. I want to talk about your work, your really groundbreaking work in creating or co-creating, I believe, the Autism at Work
Mm,
program for
mm,
SAP. As you know, this podcast has a large audience of people who are neurodivergent, whether they have autism or not. You and I both have children who are on the spectrum, although at different places on the spectrum. You've said that if there's anything that you are proud of for your 26 years at SAP, it is the Autism at Work legacy, which you said may well be sort of your lasting legacy. How did you sort of take the leap?
mm.
Because I would imagine that that wasn't a thing that was tied to compensation or promotion or visibility. What made that happen?
I like to use a word called choiceless decisions. Right?
Choiceless decisions.
You get to a point where there is no plan B. You just do it because it's the right thing to do. And I had no grand plans, and I say this across every platform that people ask me, like, how did he come up with this great idea? I didn't come up with any great idea. I just felt it was the right thing to do, and I kept putting one step ahead of the other, and boom, something magical happened. I say it's the best example of goodwill gone viral. Good people doing the
Wow.
good things came together, and magic happened. If I go back in time and try to do that again, would it have happened? I don't know, because context matters,
Hmm.
right? And you can't recreate the context. So when I look back, after my son's diagnosis, which you would understand as a parent was heartbreaking at so many different levels, I processed it very differently. My wife processed it very differently. The day my son's diagnosis happened, when the doctor said, okay, Vivan is on the spectrum, we don't know how severe it could be, but, start on therapies. I went on, I locked myself in a bathroom and cried. And I said, okay, this is the end of the world for me, right?
Hmm.
I really had no tools to process this. And I went through what a lot of people go through, the 5 stages of grief, of denial, and finally to acceptance. It took me a lot of time to get there, maybe 2 or 3 months. My wife, on the other hand, processed it very differently. She was like, okay, fine, he's on the spectrum. What can we do now?
Hmm.
Let's
Hmm.
figure out the best doctor, the best therapy. She was very objective about it. It's like, fine. And I went through my own, like, why me, and all the depression and all the bullshit went into my head, and I was trying to fight this out. But really, for me, Morra, the defining moment in that journey was a phone call from my mentor. Her name is Dr. Kiran Bedi, one of the most accomplished leaders that I've met. I had literally shut myself out from the world, except my team who knew about it, but I was not responding to emails properly, no social calls, nothing. And I would normally respond to my mentor in like 5 minutes.
Hmm.
And once she did not hear from me for a month, she called me and she said, Ferose, what happened? Why are you not responding to my calls? And I broke down saying, Vivan is diagnosed with autism. I don't know what to do. At that moment, she said something that changed the course of my life forever. She said, Feroz, most people spend their entire life not knowing what their purpose is. You're incredibly fortunate the purpose found you. And said, you could now, lead the rest of your life taking care of Vivan, which is your first responsibility. But you're also in a position of power. You're in a position of authority. You have the network. You're smart. You're intelligent. You could use all of that to not just take care of Vivan, but for many others who are like him, but who are less fortunate.
Hmm.
Make that your mission for life. And at that moment, Morra, in my mind, it was like a switch going off, like from seeing myself as a victim as to why me, to very quickly realizing, oh, why not me?
Hmm.
And that changed the complete trajectory of my life after that. And not that I knew what to do. I mean, of course, everybody asks me this question when I'm teaching at Columbia. I get it, Feroz. Purpose is important, and we all know we should find our purpose. But how the hell do I find my purpose?
Exactly.
That's the $1 million question. I get it. And I say there are no formulas for it. But if you're searching for it, you will get it. But you have to search for it. You have to surrender yourself in that search. And it will come to you. And for different people, it could be different things. And if you understand Gandhi's life, his defining moment, and I call it the Gandhi moment, was when he was thrown out of a train because he was seen as a person with brown color, and he said, "No, I'm going to fight this." That was his defining moment. Now, many other people would have been, thrown out of a train but they didn't become Gandhis,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? So, what is it? And my core insight about leadership is that leadership is nothing but decisions you make at your defining moments.
Wow.
People ask this question, oh, are they born? Can they be trained? And my take is very simple. It's the decisions you make at your defining moment that gets you on a path of leadership. That phone call was a defining moment. Now, I could have let it pass too. Fine, I get it. Nothing happened. But I decided to act. And it took me years before the autism at work happened. It didn't happen overnight. You take one step. I started understanding what autism was. I was trying to figure out what can we do. But it was the search. It was the fact that I couldn't sleep at night thinking that children on the autism spectrum could lead their whole life without meaning. And I said, I can't accept that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that, everybody is good at something, that every person wants to live a life of dignity. That is just universal. That includes my son. And I said, how can I live the rest of my life believing that my son should just be at home and he doesn't want to live a life of dignity? I just didn't accept that narrative. But I also didn't know what to do until one thing led to the other. And, I'd met Thakul Sana from Specialistan and who was hiring people on the spectrum. And I said, maybe I can do that at SAP. And that's what I keep telling leaders across the world. When I go to corporates and give my talks, I said, if you're in a position of power
Mm-hmm.
and you're not using that power to lift people up, you do not deserve to be called a leader in the first place. That's the only responsibility of a leader, to lift people up. And Gandhi said this beautifully. He said, how do I know which decision is right or wrong? And he said, there's only one way to figure it out. He said, if a decision will help the poorest, the marginalized, the disabled, then it's the right decision.
Right.
That's it.
Did you get pushback along the way?
Huge. Everybody said I was smoking. It's a stupid idea. How can we hire people on the spectrum? They have no college degrees. They have no education. They have no social skills. So I got a lot of pushback. But that's where I think I had some unfair advantage. I was in a position of power, so I could, I said, you may not like it, but, I'm the boss, so better do it. I didn't say it that way, but I said I had leverage.
Yeah.
I had agency. And that's
Yep.
what I say. People in power have agency and leverage to do the right thing. And I was fortunate to be in that position. Of course, people wouldn't just do it because I told them. I also had to show them that it is valuable, that it made sense, it made business sense. I was running a large corporate organization. So if you look at our first media press release of Autism at Work, I wrote that and we said, hiring people on the autism spectrum is good for business because they
Mm-hmm.
think differently. They're good to creating an innovative environment. We didn't say we are doing it because it's a social commitment or it makes us look good and this is what we should do. Because I was working in the framing of the corporate setup, and
Right.
I had to show that it made business sense. That's the only way it would scale. That's the reason today more than 100 companies have an Autism at Work program, because it makes business sense to hire people on the autism spectrum because they see the world differently.
How did the Autism at Work program, do you think, or have you heard from folks who are on the spectrum and who are already at SAP? How did it change their lives? I
Oh,
mean, who either skated under the surface or, hadn't really disclosed or passed or masked.
I get, some of the most moving things people have told me have been people directly impacted by the program, not that SAP sometimes, because so many other companies have started an Autism at Work program. I must confess, what moves me the most, and sometimes I feel that I get too much credit, is from the parents of the kids on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
It's the parents who are the most grateful. I still get mails from parents who would just write, say, thank you for giving us hope. The idea was not that everybody should work at a tech company. The idea was not that you should work at SAP. The idea was you just give hope. that there is a reason for you to live. There is a reason for you to look forward to. And I never understood that hope was such a core part of the Autism at Work's journey. That a lot of people who were hopeless suddenly felt there is something to look forward to. And there's a reason why, I love
Yes.
hope. The two words that I really want to live by is hope and truth. Truth aspiring to Gandhi, and hope to Obama.
Actually,
But
what does your Google sign say? I don't Google. My wife knows everything. I thought it said hope for a second. That's
which is
funny.
true, by the way. My
Yeah.
wife knows. My wife is a Google before Google. She seems to just have
But I guess my question is different. It's for people who are, what are typically called high functioning, right? Who
yeah,
who may have already been hired at SAP, who
yeah,
people don't even know they're on the spectrum.
yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
may not even know they're on the spectrum.
yeah. Mm.
How has that sort of owning of this category called autism at work, do you think, changed the experience for people? One of my favorite quotes about neurodivergence is like, you don't only have to focus on hiring new neurodivergent people. We're already here,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
How did it change that experience, do you think?
There are different. I get different kinds of feedback. When I was very fortunate to know Temple Grandin very well and host her at home, and she said, "Feroz, 50% of Silicon Valley is on the spectrum."
Yeah.
Yeah, at
Huh.
some, and we are somewhere all on the spectrum. Now, sometimes that narrative could also have the opposite effect, because I know a lot of severely challenged people don't like the fact that everybody thinks they are on the spectrum. They're like, I get it, but my challenges are so much more amplified and much more difficult than the other. So I think there are so many nuances to this, Morra, and I want to be very sensitive and respectful for that, because one of the pushbacks that I received because of the Autism at Work program is that a lot of people said, Feroz, the hiring of autistic people are typically limited to the top 1% of the most highly functional autistic people. And I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
And so after almost 10 years and the success of the Autism Ed program, I realized I was doing it all wrong. I realized that I should have focused on the bottom 1%, because if I had done the bottom 1%, it would have been much easier to move upwards.
Interesting.
But I did the top 1%, and it hasn't trickled down to the bottom yet. So my mission now is really to see how can we provide meaningful opportunities to all people, including the severely challenged. And I would put my son also in the same category, who's nonverbal, has severe challenges. But I don't want to give up on the idea that he can be independent, that he can lead a meaningful life, that he can contribute to the society. Viktor Franklin's book, which is my favorite, like, a book that is kind of the Bible for me. He says that the only reason man lives is the search for meaning. It's the search for purpose. And I think everybody deserves that, including my son. I
Yes.
think when he feels that he's contributing, not just consuming, but contributing, he would live a meaningful life.
We all have the right to live a meaningful life.
Absolutely.
I'm writing a book about for people who are leaders and who identify as either neurodivergent or having a different brain or being different thinkers. I use a very wide umbrella of neurodivergence.
Mm,
And I think that, one of the things that it really takes to try to help people find their own agency,
mm,
right?
mm,
Is releasing sort of expectations that you have. I guess
mm,
that's a question. My question is, we've talked about leaders having agency. We've
mm,
talked about everybody having a need for purpose and meaning.
mm.
How can everyday people, especially at work, find the agency that they need to go ahead and live out in a way? I feel that one of the things that work is so good at is stripping us of our human agency sometimes. And the complaints that I hear, especially from neurodivergent folks, is like, they just want to box me in. They just want to tell me what to do all the time. And it's not working. It's not helping me get what I need and work in the way that I need to work.
I also think, can we give agency? It's not just about do you
Right. Can we give
can we
agency?
give agency is a big question. And I see my son as the ultimate, at least in my life. How can I give him agency? Because
Right.
the thing that I feel very sad about his life is he doesn't seem to have the a lot of agency. And my constant quest is, how can I give him agency in whatever capacity he can? Because once I asked him this question, and he communicates using a letterboard. So he points at alphabets. It's a very slow process, but he's deeply insightful. So once I asked him, Vivan, what is your message for the world? And he typed something incredibly profound. He said, hope stuck in a spider's web struggles to be free.
Whoa.
And it blew my mind. If you ask me to phrase one sentence that defines the state of the world, it's that sentence. Hope stuck in a spider's web struggles to be free.
What do you think he meant?
I have no clue. I think
Yeah.
there were, yeah, I mean, this is my own interpretation of it. I think one, maybe he's talking about his own personal condition, because he often feels that he's kind of inside a prison because he has so many ideas and thoughts, but things can't come out because he doesn't have the agency for that. So he may be telling from his own perspective that he feels that for him, hope is stuck in a spider's web, struggles to be free. But he's also very aware of the state of the world because he's constantly listening to news, and he knows what's happening across the world. Because the question that I asked him is, what is your message for the world?
Right. Right.
And so he may also be talking about the state of the world, that hope is stuck in a spider's web, struggles to be free. It didn't matter, but it was so incredibly profound. I was like, wow, I couldn't have made that statement up in my. So I don't know, maybe that's a superpower, because he can't speak, he can deeply think.
Huh.
He can get
But
all
how
the.
frustrating not to be able to express it, right?
Absolutely. That's the hard part. And how do I provide him agency is, and not just to him, but so many people around us at workplace, can we give them the agent to express themselves? You know, that's what good leaders do, right? They give agency to people whom they work with to express themselves, to be the best version of themselves. I think that's what eventually leadership is about. And it has to start with you and the people whom you love and care for, and then you can expand it.
I think that's a great place to leave it.
Thank you, Morra. Thank you so much for this
That
beautiful conversation. I didn't realize it's more than an hour.
I will never forget that phrase and from your son. So thank him for me.
Thank you.